truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Brand new reaction coming in from Rudy Giuliani.
And right now, President Trump's former top advisor on Russia.
More breaking news tonight on Rudy Giuliani.
Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani is under criminal investigation.
President Trump is not going to cooperate.
The latest on impeachment.
Impeachment investigation. President Trump.
President Trump, President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump's
educational issues with the children that have been poisoned. We're at one of the encampments that homeless people are living at.
It's really discouraging to notice these similarities where you have the administration going, there's absolutely nothing wrong with your water. But here, take these filters.
Are you on Social Security?
I am, but I work a full-time business.
I know, but you're aware Social Security is a socialist program.
Well, that's beside the point.
What's up, Jordan Sheridan in the house, status quo. I hope everyone's having a lovely Monday, and most importantly, I hope you could hear me. What a mess. What a mess yesterday was, trying to bring you the important news. I think my audio is working. Let me know if you could hear me. Let me know if you could see me okay. And we could go from there. Yes, no, maybe so. Can you hear me? Can you see me? How we doing? I think I'm okay. And thanks to the folks who stuck with us yesterday. We had some audio problems, but I think we're getting it worked out. The kinks worked out. We're dealing with a new camera, and we didn't have a lot of time for troubleshooting. Thank you, Seth Peterson, $20 in the super chat already, and I just started. I deeply appreciate all your hard work. Thank you, Seth, for that kind contribution. Mike Thompson, $2 in the super chat, and I don't want to forget. Status Quo left a super chat. Who's that? That said we're $6,741 away. $6,741 away from reaching our GoFundMe goal. We'll get into that in a little bit. So, we covered the big rally Saturday in Queensbridge Park, New York City. Over 25,000 people for Bernie Sanders. You wouldn't know because the corporate media barely mentioned it. So we did that. We were live yesterday for quite a bit, showing you some of our coverage from there. And this afternoon, I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Jill Stein, who's been in the news, along with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, the ridiculous smears lodged at both of those fine women against from Hillary Clinton. So Jill Stein was nice enough to speak with us, and we will play that in just a short minute. Now, remember, folks, every single one of you, I need every single one of you. We got 350 people watching. I need all of you to go right under the video and press the thumbs up button. It's the like button. The more people that press that thumbs up button, the more people that will see this very live stream. It's really helpful if every single person watching could press the like button. Even if you don't like me, press the like button and then tell me you don't like me in the comments. Or if you're a troll, press the like button and then go on to troll me. I don't mind. We just need more people to like because that helps get the numbers up. YouTube is really, really doing a number as far as suppressing this channel. Along with other independent media channels. Of course, yesterday we got some new signups. We would love to see some more signups today. We're at 716 wonderful paying Status Quo members. We want to get that to 1,000 by the end of this year. So if you have been on the fence, if you want to support our in-the-field journalism from rallies to Flint to Newark, to other places that no other media outlet is going, where we interview and give a microphone to the people, statusquo.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. It makes a huge difference, and that's how we're going to grow, staying actually independent, as opposed to some other outlets that pretend to be other independent, but not so much. Follow us at Status Quo on Twitter. Check out our podcast. Just Google it, Status Quo Podcasts, where we turn our live streams into podcasts, as well as our interviews, like this one with Jill Stein, into audio for podcasts. And go to statusquo.com, enter your email. That's another great way for us to grow. So I'm going to play the Jill Stein interview. Have no fear. Have no fear. But before that, I just want you to see. I mean, you're not shocked. You're not shocked. And this is a super chat. It's a super chat. And like I said in the open, oh my God, we are just knocking on the door. Knocking on the door here. We are less than $7,000 away. Less than $7,000 away from finally meeting our GoFundMe goal of $85,000. I'm so happy, so excited. We passed 78,000 during the live stream yesterday. Thank you to the over 1,000 of you who have already donated. Some of you have donated literally 20 to 30 times. Keep it coming if you can. If you can't, we get it. No problem. If you can, we're almost done. We're getting there. We are a startup. Our largest donation was $5,000 from a viewer. We haven't had any plutocrats funding us. No, haven't gotten any. I mean, Susan Sarandon gave us some money, but nothing crazy. It's mostly been through viewers. So definitely keep it coming. Because, as you see, Bernie still has a lot of people going to these rallies. So we're going to need more funding to be able to go out in the field. And now we finally have that LiveView 300 that is a new piece of equipment that we'll be using. I think Joseph, our new cameraman, has worked out the kinks. So we'll be using that for our next in-the-field reporting trip. So before I get to the Jill Stein interview, I just want to show you, check out MSNBC's reaction. A viewer sent this to us, and then Jen brought it to my attention. Check out MSNBC's reaction to Bernie Sanders' largest rally of the 2020 campaign so far, over 25,000 people. Look how excited the Morning Joe crew was.
Have one of the best Democratic presidential primary fields in a generation. And much of that is thanks to the work that Bernie Sanders has done in his entire life. In this new, historic freshman congressional class, an overwhelming amount of them now reject corporate PAC money. That's thanks to Bernie. Enormous amount of the House of Representatives endorse Medicare for all. That's thanks to Bernie.
Okay, Senator and presidential candidate Bernie Sanders got an endorsement from New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez this weekend in a rally that reportedly drew 26,000 people. But the news from a new poll in Iowa is with Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who has surged to the top tier of candidates in Iowa after his October debate performance. Slow and steady. According to the newest Suffolk University USA Today poll out this morning, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg are statistically tied for first place, all sitting within the poll's 4.4 margin of error. Biden and Warren are 1 point apart, 18 to 17%. Buttigieg is at 13%, up 7 points since June in the first-in-the-nation caucus state. Senator Bernie Sanders remains unchanged since the summer at 9%, falling to fourth place. Tom Steyer, Tulsi Gabbard, Kamala Harris, and Amy Klobuchar are all in a four-way tie for sixth place with 3%. Joining us now, former Chief of Staff to the DCCC and a former Director of Strategic Communications for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, Adrienne Elrod. She's an MSNBC contributor. So, Adrienne, what do you make of this poll, and especially Mayor Pete?
Well, Mika, Mayor Pete definitely had a strong debate last week, and I think we're now seeing that bounce from the debate reflected in this poll. Look, Mayor Pete has been laying the groundwork in Iowa for months. He's got a very strong team there, a very solid operation. Some of
You can't make this up. You cannot make this stuff up. I mean, literally, Bernie Sanders has over 25,000 people in Queens. Mika Brzezinski, I'm bored. I'm bored by Bernie. Just so boring. So boring. And, hold on. And Mika's so bored by it. But Pete Buttigieg, he's now at 13% in a fakakta poll, which I'm about to show you. The poll is ridiculous. And let's have a Hillary Clinton veteran on to talk about how great Mayor Pete is. I mean, God, they can't give Bernie just an inch. They can't even bring themselves to give this man who had a heart attack 2 weeks ago credit for inspiring over 25,000 people. Can you imagine if Elizabeth Warren on a Saturday had a rally of over 25,000 with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsing her? Could you imagine the field day MSNBC would have, not just for one day, for many, many days? It's just disgusting. The bias, it's not even bias. It's not even propaganda. It's utter nonsense. It's, I hate to say it, it's kind of getting to that fake news territory. I don't use that phrase because I think the way Trump uses it is very fascist, and he's basically doing what dictators do, which is undermine the press. But MSNBC, I mean, for God's sakes, you don't have to like Bernie Sanders, but at least give him his due. Can we agree? I digress. So, we got 550 people watching. Only 300 of you have pressed that like button. So I'm about to play the Jill Stein interview. The more people that press the like button, the more people that will see the live stream. So if the over 250 of you that have not pressed the like button yet, if you could right now just go into that video, smash that thumbs up button, the more people that press the like button, the more people that will see this live stream. Before I play the Jill Stein interview, let me read some super chats. Jameson Doan, $5 in the super chat. Jordan, have you seen latest BS? They're attributing Bernie quotes to Warren, flat out brazenly, no attempt to conceal their deceit. I did see that. It was unbelievable. The NBC issued a quote to Elizabeth Warren from the debate that Bernie Sanders said. And then a bunch of other outlets, I believe, including Bloomberg, picked it up. I mean, it's just propaganda that has... I've never seen this kind of propaganda, and I've kind of been doing this media journalism thing for over a decade now. I mean, we know it exists, but it is now thicker and stronger than it's ever been, which I actually think is going to benefit Bernie Sanders, because now that he has AOC on his side, the working class of America, the multiracial working class coalition that Bernie Sanders with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is hoping to galvanize, they're going to have an enemy. I don't mean physically. I'm not talking violence, but the media is their enemy now, because the media, instead of giving Bernie and AOC and progressives a fair shot and showing these are their ideas, let's explore these ideas versus the neoliberal wing's ideas and give voters the truth about both plans, and then viewers and voters could decide, they're basically just working for Pete Buttigieg, working for Joe Biden, working for Elizabeth Warren. Christian says, Jordan, you're a thick daddy. Well, thank you. I hope I'm not too fat, but thank you for that compliment. And just so you know, that poll that MSNBC led with, where Mika said, oh, Bernie had over 25,000 people, I'm bored. Let's move on to Pete. Oh, look at that Iowa poll. Pete's at 13%. It just so happens, you know, not many people in the media like to actually read these polls. Jen and I take the time to read it. You see that part of the poll right there? What is your age category? Well, when I bring out my handy calculator here, if you see 45 to 55, 17% of those polled. 56 to 65, 18% of those polled. 66 to 75, 16% of those polled. This is in a recent Iowa poll that just came out this morning. Over 75, 10%. When you add up all of those over 45 years old, 61%. 61% of those polled in this new Suffolk University Iowa poll were over the age of 45. I'm not knocking you if you're over the age of 45. I'll be there one day soon. But, well, not soon, but, you know, if I'm lucky enough to live that long. But it's not exactly Bernie Sanders' strongest demographic group. He does incredibly well. His strongest is under 40, but under 45 too. Specifically, 18 to 29 is his real sweet spot of strongest support. Not that there's not older people like you watching in the audience. A lot of older people feel the burn too. But by the data, by the numbers, older people are definitely more attracted to Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Mayor Pete, who, for the life of me, I don't know why this man has any qualifications to run for president. It's not like South Bend, Indiana is like, you know, a roaring economic engine. It's not like South Bend, Indiana is some wonderful case study of the power and the success of gentrification. I call gentrification economic terrorism, but that's just me. So, of course, the polls that they're citing to basically put out this narrative that forget the rally crowd, forget the energy on the ground, forget AOC's endorsement, Bernie's, you know, treading water back there in fourth place. The surveyed, 61% of those they surveyed are over the age of 45. You don't think that's important to tell your viewers? You don't think it's important to tell your viewers, oh, well, Bernie Sanders tends to do well among younger voters? I'm not a polling truther. I believe most of the polls. We can't deny, we can't bury our head in the sand and say Warren hasn't surged. She has surged. And finally, Bernie's campaign, not him directly, but you heard Nina Turner had some words, not mentioning Warren by name, but very clearly talking about Warren at the rally Saturday. Other surrogates did as well. It's time for Bernie's campaign to go after Warren. Not personally, but on policy, on her lack of consistency, on her lack of conviction. Bernie's campaign's going to have to do it. Bernie's supporters and top advisors are the ones to do it right now. But although the polls do show Warren is surging, these polls showing Bernie in fourth and fifth place, always read the poll. Look at the ages of who they are surveying. They are wildly undersampling younger voters. They are wildly oversampling older voters. Cesar Omar Sanchez, $14.99 in the super chat. Gracias, Jordan. Adelante. Keep pushing forward and exposing the media lies. We're trying. Thank you so much for the kind donation. Also want to give some love. Andrea just left $25 in the GoFundMe. We're now at $78,294. Oh my Lord. Oh my Lord. What I would love to do is try to get to $79,000 by the end of this Jill Stein interview. So I'm about to play it. If you like this reporting, if you like giving folks like Jill Stein a voice, definitely pitch into the GoFundMe. And as a reminder, if you say to me, Jordan, I can't do both, would you rather me pitch into the GoFundMe or become a sustaining member, paying $5 to $10 a month as a member? Definitely, we'd rather you be a member. I mean, we'd rather you do both. But if we only could get one, definitely consider becoming a Status Quo member for as low as $5 a month or $10 a month or $179 annually. It makes a huge difference. This is how we grow for the long term. And one more public service announcement before I drop into Jill Stein interview. This Thursday, October 22nd, 23rd, 24th, October 24th, this Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Time at night, we will have our monthly members call. We're doing it a little early this month because next week I'm going to Mexico for my younger brother's bachelor party. God forbid. I hope I make it. I hope I survive that experience. My younger brother Jared's getting married, so going to Mexico for that. Should be a fun time. So this Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Time, statusquo.com/join. If you're already a member or a patron, you know the drill. You'll get the link. It's always a good time. It's not through YouTube. We do it through Zoom. So you see my ugly face. I see your face. Jen is always in it. I think Joseph will be in it this time. We talk. We laugh. We cry. We answer questions, comments, concerns. Give you way too much information. We might have some hints as to a big story Jen and I have been working on behind the scenes, an investigative story. So definitely sign up to become a member for that. And without further ado, here is my conversation with former Green Party candidate Dr. Jill Stein, who was the recipient of Hillary Clinton calling her and Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Dr. Jill Stein, who's been in the news the last few days. Green Party candidate for president in 2016, and obviously longtime peace advocate, anti-war activist, and political influencer. I don't need to kind of repeat what Hillary Clinton said. Everybody knows what she's been saying. She seems to be, I guess, trying to deflect off of some other things in the news about her and her campaign, which we'll get to a little bit later, by going after Tulsi Gabbard and then speaking as a fact, calling you a quote-unquote Russian asset. I'll just ask you straight to the point. When you initially heard that, what was your reaction?
It was so preposterous. You know, she said, I'm a Russian asset, totally, and that I may be blocking Tulsi's access to the Green nomination. It's like ignorant and arrogant. I'm not running, you know, this is all over the media. I should say this is, you know, it's public information and it can readily be found by simple Googling. I mean, it's as if Hillary's team didn't Google the obvious here. In a way, I'm really glad that this is being uncovered, you know, because this is a window into, it's really the tip of the iceberg in a very sick era of McCarthyism and political repression, targeting, vilifying political opponents and peace advocates, censoring the press, and warmongering. Those three things go together. Those three things are very dangerous. They really characterize our era, and it's been very hard to have a real discussion about them. And when I saw Hillary had sort of lifted the curtain on this, elephant in the room, I thought, wow, this is really great. Now we get to actually discuss this instead of having it sort of eat away at the heart of America in so many ways, from our economy to our elections to this pervasive corruption of foreign policy and decision making. It so badly begs to be brought out. My fingers are crossed that we can continue having this discussion, and I've been really surprised that, there's the usual circling the wagons around the Democratic Party machine and around Hillary and around the usual bashing against Tulsi Gabbard and myself and the Green Party. That's been, maybe it's new for Tulsi, but it's not new for me. This campaign really began against me. And it's funny, there's sort of a parallel. Tulsi's now going through what I went through, starting with my nomination. My visit to Russia, which was this, which was really the springboard for the biggest smear campaign against me, that I was a Russian asset or a spy or, a tool, colluding with the Kremlin, or an ignorant Putin puppet. All that really began when I got the nomination. I had visited Moscow in 2015 as part of a media conference that was held by RT, and this was a legitimate conference attended by media from all over the world, including the BBC, the largest TV networks in India, China TV, and so on. A whole variety of legitimate press was there, and I really wanted them to hear that there was another view, especially about the war, about the bombing campaign that Russia had just begun at that time in Syria, which I was calling for a ceasefire and a peace offensive in the Middle East. And my message actually at the time was, we know this strategy well. We've been doing this in the United States here. This has been our policy towards the Middle East. It's awful for Russia to be now following in our footsteps. This is a quagmire, and it's exploding. We need to ramp this down. That conversation badly needed to happen. That's why I was there, along with promoting a global Green New Deal and a nuclear weapons ban. But
so if you were speaking out at the time against Russia bombing Syria, that would make you one pretty shoddy asset.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole thing was preposterous. But the point I was making was that this happened back in December of 2015, and it was all public. I was putting out newsletters and press releases about it. I was publicly raising money for it in order to do the trip. It was part of also a visit to Paris and the climate summit. I met with Jeremy Corbyn. I met with the assistant climate negotiator for China. I met with many public figures. I did not meet with Putin. I went to a conference in Moscow in order to get the message. Putin happened to sit at the head table briefly before he gave a speech in Russian, but he wasn't there to talk to anybody. I had hoped to talk to him. I wasn't able to talk to him. There was no translator. The English speakers spoke English to each other. The Russians at the table all spoke Russian to each other. There was no contact there. The whole thing was preposterous and contrary to public facts. And then, I was accused basically in the Steele report, which was the first place I saw it, the now highly discredited Steele report. But, I saw this bold-faced lie in the Steele report that Russia had sponsored my trip, and that therefore, I was on the take from Kremlin and was in this very compromised relationship with them and sort of promoting their message. And that was false. I had the receipts to prove it. My fundraising in order to make the trip had been perfectly public. So, it was a big smear. It was clearly a political thing because it was all public knowledge well in advance, but some political operatives began tweeting about it at the time I got the nomination in July. So it was clearly a politically motivated smear, and it's kind of been waxing and waning for 2 years, 3 years, and I'm really grateful to have a chance to discuss this publicly. It's not about me, I'm like an incidental factoid here in a mountain of information, and far greater concerns than the smear campaign against me is what this says about who's controlling U.S. foreign policy, censorship, and manipulation of the U.S. public. Yes, Russians are probing our vulnerabilities constantly in all areas, as we are doing to them, as most capable democracies and countries are doing to each other. And you can just take a look at the Oxford University's reports. They have a whole series of reports on this, which are very good and put the whole thing into perspective. The Senate Intelligence Committee reports like the information presented to the Mueller committee, it looks at one particular window and it blows. It's like, oh, I'm shocked, shocked that there are manipulative Russian messages out there. Oh, shock, The reality is this is what the internet looks like. This is what social media looks like. By any realistic measure, Russia's interference in social media as in the election is really pretty small change compared to the real sources of interference. So just to put out to underscore that point first about social media, the U.S. budget, well, let me say first, the entire Russian budget for social media interference, adventures, whatever you call it, is $12 million per year. The U.S. budget is more like $200 million per year, and perhaps much greater than that, but that's what's been specifically identified. Israel's is $100 million. So we're the big players here. Russia's kind of a bit player. And yeah, no doubt they're probing our social media. Whether it's official or unofficial, I think isn't clear at this point. But yeah, there's a lot of nefarious adventures going on out there. Not even to call it adventures. I don't mean to minimize it. There's nefarious stuff, but we're very much a part of that. And in fact, the rules, we used to be protected here in the U.S. We used to be protected at least from propaganda on the part of our own government. Those protections were repealed in 2013. And what is that? How much of that $200 million social media budget, is going to the likes of Clint Watts, and his organization? He was a former military propagandist trying to propagandize in the Middle East, to a huge budget. And then now he's kind of cashing in as a private contractor to provide these tools, no doubt, to the U.S. government, the Atlantic Council, who knows, who's all in on this. We don't exactly know, but there's a lot of counter currents out there on social media and in legacy media. We need to be skeptical consumers, and we need to hear all points of view. Regrettably, the really thoughtful and broad point of view, like that you represent, or Aaron Mate, or Glenn Greenwald, or Max Blumenthal, and others with, particularly with the Gray Zone Project and Consortium News and so on. People who are really looking at this more broadly, they're being completely suppressed here, which again ties us back to why I'm glad, why Hillary Clinton has done us such a favor to lift the veil on this cancer of McCarthyism that's really, it's destabilizing our foreign policy. It is interfering with our press freedoms and our communications here at home. And this is dangerous at a time when the military budget is consuming 60% of our discretionary budget, 60% and growing, supported by Democrats as well as Republicans. When we are bombing 7 countries and on the verge of many more, when we have special operations in something like 70 or 80 countries right now around the world, we are the empire, like the world has never seen. This has a huge cost, not only to our financial budget, but to our democracy, to our very survival into the 21st century. So thank you, Hillary Clinton, for enabling a greater public discussion of this very critical and timely problem.
I'd like to ask you, because this phrase really grates at me, this sowing chaos, sowing discord, because I don't know, I'm just a very common sense person. I covered the campaign in 2016. You and I have spoken about it quite a bit. And, I was in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and just little markers that at the time you think about it, I don't really see any Clinton lawn signs. I see a lot of Trump signage all over the place. When I go to Hillary Clinton events at colleges, it's mostly older people. They're not getting many students out. These things that add up to show an enthusiasm gap have nothing to do with a foreign country. So it's not even quantifiable. Aaron Mate has spoken about this, I think, very brilliantly. you know, there's like memes of Jesus from fake Russian pages and things like that. It's not even quantifiable. There's no way to even quantify whether things somebody sees on social media has any influence on voting behavior. But one thing that does is if your job got sent to Mexico or China, or your plant has been closed down, or your YMCA has been closed down. I'd like to ask you, because to me, this sowing chaos nonsense, which is part of that McCarthyism, is really just a deflection from the main issue, a phony populist, in my view. Now we're seeing, you know, a growing fascist conned a lot of people into thinking he was the everyman speaking for them.
Exactly. And why were people vulnerable to that kind of demagoguery? You know, this is exactly the demagoguery from Trump, you know, his false populism. This is a classic textbook example of how fascism takes hold. It's always in the presence, not always, but, you know, usually in the face of incredible economic and social despair. We got that despair right now, big time, you know, whether you're looking at the economic hardships where, you know, by any real measure, almost half of Americans are in or near poverty, are extremely insecure about their economic status if they're not already downwardly mobile. Half of Americans basically don't have access to health care. Either they can't afford it at all or they can't afford to use it. You know, an entire generation of young people and not so young people are held hostage by unpayable student debt. You know, we've got a real crisis on our hands, you know, and mortality is going way up among those people who are being hit hard economically. And we've got an epidemic of opioid use and drug overdoses and depression and suicides. You know, it's no secret that we are in very dark times. And it's also no secret that that's been, you know, brought to us courtesy of both political parties, mainstream parties that are serving the economic elite. So, you know, Trump was able to play on that on that outrage, most recently against Barack Obama for having bailed out the banks and not the 6 or 7 million homeowners who were basically cheated out of their homes. So there still is incredible outrage. The Wall Street Journal had a poll about a month ago showing that it's 70% who aren't just, quote, fed up. They are self-described as, you know, as angry at the bipartisan political system for screwing them. So, you know, it's like John Kennedy saying comes to mind that those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. You know, we are a pressure cooker that is getting ready to explode. And what the strategy of the imperialists, you know, the oligarchs, the militarists, the proponents of empire, their strategy is to shut down on these basic democratic vehicles for discussion, for democratic debate, and for change. They're trying to block political change because they are very afraid that their track record is catching up with them and that they're going to be booted out the minute people have a choice. And this is why I think, you know, Hillary Clinton didn't just leave this at Tulsi Gabbard. You know, she needed to smear me too, to say, if you go to a third party, or if you even support a third party, we're coming after you. You know, be very afraid of exercising your political freedom. Be very afraid. And, you know, we see this playing out all over the place. You know, not only the complicity of the mainstream media, but in just everyday conversations. You know, people who haven't locked into the Trump camp are kind of lost at sea right now. They don't know what to do. They're terrified. They don't like where the mainstream political system and the Democrats are going, but they cling to this kind of Santa Claus hope of change inside the Democratic Party. And I say Santa Claus hope because I personally find it impossible to suspend disbelief. After almost a century of this, you know, constant betrayal of progressive saviors who are always held up, from Henry Wallace during the Second World War to Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders. We have progressive saviors who are allowed to be seen and heard, but then they get smacked down. This is the game plan here, folks. How many times do we have to go through it and fail to recognize we need to start organizing on firm ground, that they can't just pull out from under us every election. So people are scared. They're very scared because we're in this bipartisan system, this lesser evil voting system that makes you worry, will my vote have unintended consequences? Now, it was clear in 2016, people who voted for me were not otherwise going to come out and vote. They weren't taken away from anybody. But more to the point, there were 100 million people who wouldn't vote at all. 100 million who are disproportionately black, brown, millennial, and poor. Did Russia get to all of them and tell them, not to vote? I don't think so. What an insult. People are acting, on their own deeply felt experience and hungering for something else, like that Wall Street Journal poll told us. 70%, are angry at the political system that has thrown them under the bus. So what does the political system do? It tries to shut down all other options by essentially equating progressives with Trump. And the solution here, I just want to put it on the table because this isn't so complicated. This isn't rocket science. The state of Maine has already passed ranked choice voting. Even if you share Hillary Clinton's paranoia that the Russians are around every corner, well, this is a great way to disrupt any evil foreigner's secret plan to co-opt a presidential candidate, a progressive presidential candidate, and split the Democrats' vote, so-called. It can't happen under ranked choice voting. It makes vote splitting impossible. It lets you rank your choices. If your first choice loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. There's going to be no spoiling of the vote, no unintended consequences. So even the Russia baiters should be out there now pounding the pavement for ranked choice voting. If we bailed out Wall Street to the tune of almost $1 trillion at the time of the crash, almost $1 trillion over the course of 3 or 4 days? Could we not make a critical patch to our voting system over the course of the next month? This could happen right now. Voting machines are still being purchased, which is a whole other story, but we're trying to get good, unhackable voting machines that use paper ballots. So the systems are just now coming online. It's not too late to introduce ranked choice voting like Maine has done. And it's really interesting to look at their election, where there's a wonderful green peace advocate running against Susan Collins in the Senate race for Susan Collins' seat. It's like a 3, 4, or might even be a 5-way race. There's some independents, but Maine has elected independents before. Their other senator is nominally an independent right now, Angus King. So this, the peace candidate has a real fighting chance. She's being treated very seriously by the media. And it's a little case study in what would happen if we actually liberated our votes, if we actually expanded our political freedom to the freedom we should have to be able to lead with our values. Democracy needs a moral compass. If we can't bring that into our elections, when do we have it? So we can do that. And I think it's, thank you, Hillary Clinton, for enabling us to have this conversation publicly.
And I want to, obviously you're not Tulsi Gabbard, but let's call it what it is. She was a whistleblower against the DNC in 2016. She basically, resigned and exposed that they were basically in the tank for Hillary Clinton. She's a sitting veteran. It seems that the Democrats and the Republicans bow down to military service unless you're a veteran who says, let's get out of these wars. And her main sin, it seems, as a congressperson, going over as part of a coalition to speak with a brutal dictator, just like American congressmen and leaders have done time and time again, including, the patron saint, John McCain, who has gone around the world and palled, not with us anymore, but, spoken with brutal dictators and stood on stage with neo-Nazis. Nobody has a problem with that. So why is it that, in your view, that Tulsi, who obviously there's been a concerted effort, she was the most searched candidate, I believe, in several of the debates when you look at Google, and then her campaign was being prevented from posting ads through YouTube and Google. I mean, it seems like whenever there was interest in this anti-war message, in learning about what does ending regime change mean, because most non-political junkies don't even know what that means, there was interest in her, and the media pounced against her.
Yes. And, even Hillary Clinton's attack was preceded by an attack, as I understand, in the New York Times, which essentially, sort of road tested the same notion. So she is very much, I think, in the position I was in 2016, where there were just outrageous smears raised against me. Like the recount, for example, there was a real effort made. And this was actually part of the Senate Intelligence Committee when they were investigating me. Part of the reason was for the recount. Now, any rational thinking would tell you that a recount is a way to verify the accuracy and the security of the vote. Anyone concerned about Russian interference, should have been all behind that recount. Yet I was being accused of launching the recount as a campaign to undermine confidence in American elections. It's exactly the opposite. You can't create confidence by sweeping suspicions under the rug. Daylight, is the best disinfectant. And it was really important. And in fact, the recount continues. We have several ongoing lawsuits. And I'm constantly attacked on social media for why didn't I redistribute that money? And I had stated very early on, when we had no idea that the recount was going to go on for 3 years, little did I know what I was signing up for. But it is, and we have a very large team of attorneys who have been involved in 2 states. It's still ongoing in 2 out of the 3 states. So, just to make the point, these smears are outrageous. They're very politically motivated, and there is no basis for them, is this libel? I don't know if it meets the definition of that, but it's, as you say, to simply smear Tulsi because she went to talk to, to a political figure, yes, a brutal dictator, but a brutal dictator that we are very involved in a conflict with. As John Kennedy said, we must not negotiate out of fear, but we must not fear to negotiate. Just because you talk to somebody doesn't mean they're your ally. You've got to talk to your adversaries. And in the case of Russia, it's like, yeah, on steroids, yeah, we need to talk to them. We've got 2,000 nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert pointed at each other, just as our nuclear treaties are basically being undermined by actions on both sides. But, we have played a very large role, beginning with George Bush withdrawing from the anti-ballistic missile treaty, which is really sort of the basic framework for the other treaties as well. So we need to talk to Russians, we need to talk to Syria, and bombs and missiles should not be our first reflex. It should be our absolute last, as international law tells us. That's what we do when we are imminently threatened. Otherwise, this goes to the UN Security Council. We are not at liberty to just bomb people we don't like or to just change regimes that we don't like, even if we think that they're undemocratic. Sorry about that. That's not our role, and that's not our capacity.
And by the way, it doesn't seem like we have a problem with the brutal dictator in Saudi Arabia when he was murdering and starving all of Yemen. We don't have a problem with the brutal dictator in Colombia as they assassinate journalists and political dissidents. There's plenty of brutal dictators that we're just fine with because they're good for our business interests. But
I'm sorry, finish your thought.
But we're aghast at Assad. I'm not saying people shouldn't be against Assad, but it's this selective humanitarianism of the neoliberal establishment. And for example, everybody's upset that Trump moved troops, shifted them out of northern Syria, leaving the Kurds to be attacked. Well, why isn't it that same fervor for the people in Yemen or elsewhere? It just there's no moral consistency here, and it's baffling.
Very baffling and very upsetting as the world continues to explode around us. there is blowback, as Max Blumenthal and others at Gray Zone, they did a whole piece recently about blowback, I think from Ukraine, actually, and about our, which is another kind of cesspool that begs for some daylight. There's all kinds of just very disturbing foreign policy aspects to Ukraine, starting especially in 2014 with the U.S.-supported coup. Not that whatever his name was a good guy, but, we're not in the business of overthrowing people who aren't good guys, and they pointed out that there have now been several cases just barely intercepted by the FBI of total whack jobs, right-wing fascist whack jobs, Americans who've gone over to Ukraine to be trained by the Azov Battalion, which is this band of fascists that we have supported. U.S. foreign policy has basically supported them. So our support for right-wing dictators is blowing back at us right now, but the blowback could be a whole lot bigger. 9/11 was, has to be viewed in part as blowback as well, with the vast majority of the terrorists coming from Saudi Arabia, connected to Al-Qaeda, which had been basically mobilized against the U.S. because we had troops in their country. It is not, you don't want to do that unless there's very good reason for it, and is done in a way that is, politically and socially beneficial for the people of that country too. So yeah, we've been making deals with the devil here, and the devil is coming home to roost in all kinds of ways. So even if only out of our own self-interest, even if you can't, let your heart beat, for a broader purpose here, even if your heart is stone cold and you're only going to kind of create a fortress around yourself. Well, even people of that mindset really need to pay attention here. Our foreign policy badly needs to be put back on a just and ethical footing. Right now, it's being driven by war contractors and by the Northrop Grummans and the Raytheons. Who's the head of our Department of Defense now? A former Raytheon lobbyist. Who was the special envoy to Ukraine during the infamous phone call? A lobbyist working for a lobbying company representing Raytheon. While a $49 million contract was signed and promoted by this special envoy, the Raytheon lobbyist, while he's still working for them, this $49 million contract gets signed to sell weapons. We are making a lot of money for the defense industry by seeding conflict and weaponizing small conflicts all over the world. It's going up in flames right now, and those flames are taking us down. So, it's time. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, for giving us a window into a broader discussion that's been begging to happen about this.
And I'd like to quickly segue. I don't know if you saw before we started. Julian Assange spoke at a extradition hearing in front of a UK court magistrate. From all the reports, he was not cognitively well, was struggling. The direct quote from him, when asked if he understood events in court, he said, quote, "Not really. I can't think properly. Quote, I don't understand how this is equitable. This superpower had 10 years to prepare for this case, and I can't access my writings. It's very difficult where I am to do anything, but these people have unlimited resources." He also went on to say, "They are saying journalists and whistleblowers are enemy of the people. They have unfair advantages dealing with documents, and they know the interior of my life with my psychologist. They steal my children's DNA. This is not equitable what is happening here." And also reports said he is very, very thin. So the judge denied the Assange lawyer's request to delay the extradition hearing. The Assange side citing new evidence, including that he was being spied on in that embassy. I basically look at this as the Assange is a human being. 7 years of this, and now this, by all intents and purposes, psychological torture in this British jail. He's been at the hospital wing for a long time, and it just looks like the UK through the US, with the help of Ecuador, is rubber stamping his extradition, and whatever comes after that is not going to be good either. What are your thoughts now that it seems like he's obviously feeling the effects of this?
So I didn't see that news report, and I would love to have a whole conversation about this. As a medical doctor, I've had really serious concerns since he went to the high security prison, Belmore, or whatever it's called, Balfour prison, where he, the guy hasn't had access to sunlight in 7 years, okay? That's vitamin D. You get denied vitamin D for 7 years. Even if you're taking the vitamin, it doesn't do what sunlight does. So this is extremely dangerous, and it's not inconceivable that all kinds of things could be going on just physically with his health. It's the UN Rapporteur on Human Rights, I believe, has really gone to bat for Julian Assange. And of course, that's as part of this era of McCarthyism and the suppression of real important, critical, vital discussion. This has been buried. It is a real threat, not only to basic human rights, what's going on with Julian Assange, but also to just basic freedoms and freedom of the press. He's being attacked not only as a whistleblower, but also as a publisher. He's had the Espionage Act thrown at him, which is absolutely outrageous. There are just any number of smear campaigns concocted against him, which the UN Rapporteur looked into. He said, I was not an Assange supporter at all because of what I'd seen about him and heard about him. But as I began to investigate this case, I am just flabbergasted. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's basically what he said, that he has never seen a single person so persecuted. He said Assange is not being prosecuted, he's being persecuted by at least 5 democracies here who have essentially ganged up on him, and that includes Sweden and their effort to basically push him into a trap, enabling him, they had told him it was okay for him to leave Sweden when he had been accused in a way that is actually very unjust. If you look at the details, he was very unjustly accused of rape. And in Swedish law, that means your condom burst, It doesn't mean what it means here. This is very different. He was really being framed. And he was tricked into leaving. They told him, it's okay for you to go back to England. And then the minute they did, the minute he left with their permission, they basically rang the terrorist alert and got him basically arrested at that point. And the whole situation with him being, having whatever it was, skipped out on bail or something when he was first charged with rape, and he skipped out on his bail, that is, under English law, actually a very small offense. And the largest possible punishment for that is supposed to be something like 2 or 4 weeks in jail. And even that is the exception. That's never, actually enacted, never used. So, he's being persecuted on many fronts here. It's involved many governments. His health has been absolutely under assault for 7 years. Who knows what he's been able to eat even, because he hasn't been able to go out and purchase food himself. So what kind of nutrition is he getting? There's just a whole litany of medical problems that he could have right now related to his confinement. And it's incredible that he's still alive and that he can think at all well enough to make the comments that he did. But this makes a complete mockery of our system of justice that this is allowed to go on. And I think it's only because it's kept out of public view that this is happening. I think if the American people really saw what was going on here, especially in this context now of the new McCarthyism, I think there would be absolute outrage that this is happening, and we could stop this.
And my last question, you look at the current landscape of the Democratic primary. Obviously, Bernie had a health scare, just came back with a pretty big show of force. But the media, I mean, you look back at 2007, 2008, the love fest for Obama. I think what you've seen from Senator Warren, who obviously is from Massachusetts, where you're from, is very similar to that from Obama's first campaign. It seems like the media, is anointing her, and a lot of people that shouldn't, on paper, be comfortable with her, Wall Street, lobbyists, this and that, they seem more comfortable with her than Bernie Sanders. What are your thoughts? Because it seems like in 2016 we saw the Hillary coronation, and we have definitely seen the propping up of Elizabeth Warren from a lot of the folks in that same camp.
Yes, I think it's still too soon to say for sure. And Michael Bloomberg now is talking about coming in to replace our friend Joe Biden. To me, the process is very corrupt. And it's not going to get fixed inside of the corrupt parties, is my feeling about it, which is why I don't spend a lot of time and energy participating in the Santa Claus discussion. You have to suspend disbelief to think that this is going to be different from what's gone on for the last 80 years inside the Democratic Party. I think they're going to do the best they can to fool people. And Elizabeth Warren, is looking like she would really fill the Obama bill. She appears to be very progressive, but if you look closely, you have a lot of reasons to worry, especially given a whole lot of things. And that could be the subject of another discussion, but it doesn't inspire my confidence at all. And, can she beat Donald Trump? I don't know. I just worry that Donald Trump is an expression of the corruption and the dysfunction of the bipartisan system, and its refusal to actually allow political freedom. The lesser evil system of voting is it is a blow against political freedom. We need political freedom. We need ranked choice voting. And I'm sort of putting most of my energy into trying to fix this incredibly diseased political system. It's a two-party tailspin where the public is reacting against the latest worst predator in the Oval Office. And that's what happens under two-party politics. So it's really important that we be able to open that up. Ranked choice voting does that. It's a no-lose proposition, and it's basically cost-free. But they don't want you to know about it, and they don't want you to do it. I encourage people to look at Lisa for Maine. That's lisaformaine.org, just to see an example of, where an anti-war candidate is getting a real, has a real fighting chance in a race and in a highly contested Senate position. We need that all over the country. Then we can have a reasonable Democratic race, presidential race. And until then, I'm not hopeful one way or the other. I think they're going to do what they've always done. They will find a way to push back against a real progressive inside the Democratic Party. And we are too close now to climate catastrophe, to nuclear conflagration, to the takeover of fascism. We're too close to all that to allow this cycle to be endlessly repeated.
And to end on a more hopeful note, I just was curious your thoughts, because you see globally 3 million people just participated in the climate strike a couple weeks ago. Hundreds of thousands in the United States alone, and mostly young people. I mean, there was a whole lot of young people out there. Does that give you hope for maybe a third party? Because young people aren't married to the Democratic Party or Republican Party, and they're certainly not buying the same old politics that you and I have been speaking about.
They definitely are not. And I don't want to convey that I am not hopeful. I'm extremely hopeful, to tell you the truth, because, for one, because we're actually having this discussion now that has never been allowed before, at least not in my, recent political lifetime. And because there is a rebellion going on in full swing. It's not only the student school strike for the climate, it's Extinction Rebellion, it's the labor strikes that are going on now, that have gone dormant, for decades. They're back full force, and the rank and file is not buying the, politics.
That was Dr. Jill Stein. I really appreciate her giving us that much time. We're going to post it in shorter little clips tomorrow. So if you want to watch certain parts again, we'll post it tomorrow in shorter versions. But, I think that, honestly, that conversation shows you, this is just like a normal anti-war peace, politician. She's not a Russian anything. And, she was speaking out against Russia bombing Syria years ago. So if she is an asset, she's not a great one. If you're a Russian asset, you probably shouldn't speak publicly against Russia. It's become in America. It's become in America that you're an asset or a puppet or a stooge if you just don't agree with conventional groupthink McCarthyism. Somehow this has become like a sin in American politics to be against having massive tensions with a massive nuclear power. And, the Cold War never really ended, if we're being honest. The wall came down, the Soviet Union went down, but the derangement against Russia and the Soviet Union has never ended. And honestly, I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin, but in terms of the horrors going on around the world, I think Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is tied. I think, the brutal dictator leading Colombia, just as bad, but we never hear about those people. The only time we've heard about MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is when he butchered a journalist. But, them butchering, starving, dropping bombs on Yemeni school buses and weddings and killing women and children. Just the price of doing business. It's about the money, Lebowski, that oil. So, I have people even in my life that tell me Jill Stein is a Russian asset and you're naive and this, that. I think they're living in the Cold War. I really do. And this whole notion of them being an unknown asset. Well, what are you saying? For the people saying this, do you not think people should be able to run for office outside of the Democratic or Republican Party? If you run as a Green Party candidate, if you run as a Libertarian Party candidate, does this make you an asset of Russia? Do you just think we should have this two-party duopoly forever and ever and just pick between, burnt broccoli or burnt Brussels sprouts and lesser of two evils? Because most other countries have more than two parties. It's just ridiculous. And frankly, I didn't mention it in the interview, but call me cynical that Hillary Clinton starts lobbing missiles at Tulsi Gabbard and Jill Stein while journalist Ronan Farrow comes out with a very, very, very highly publicized book on Harvey Weinstein and other brutal predator men sexually assaulting women and abusing their power. And in his book, Ronan Farrow exposed, Hillary Clinton's campaign was trying to stop Ronan Farrow from exposing Harvey Weinstein's crimes. Hillary Clinton's spokesperson had called Ronan Farrow when Ronan Farrow was trying to get an interview with Hillary Clinton and said, this report you're doing on Harvey, a massive, massive Hillary Clinton donor who, by the way, had also fundraised millions of dollars, helped fundraise millions of dollars for Hillary Clinton, getting his Hollywood buddies to fundraise. Hillary Clinton's campaign said to Ronan Farrow, this story you're doing on Harvey, it's a problem for us. I think the quote was, it's a concern. Of course, this was before Ronan broke the story 2 years ago on Harvey Weinstein and his horrific crimes against women. Just a coincidence that Hillary Clinton, lobbed these missiles when that book came out. Maybe she's trying to distract or deflect. Just a thought. Just a thought. Because the media is not covering that. They're not covering Hillary Clinton, this, women's champion, and this feminism hero trying to stop an investigative reporter from exposing Harvey Weinstein's brutal history and pattern of raping women, of assaulting women, of harassing women, of using his very, very powerful position in Hollywood to basically trade sex for career advancement. Just a thought that might have had something to do with it. So before I end, I want to thank some people during that interview. We got a couple donations to GoFundMe. Thank you. Antonia, $10 in the GoFundMe. Anonymous, $7 in the GoFundMe. Robert, $100 in the GoFundMe. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, all of those fine people. We're now $589 away from reaching $79,000 raised. And I'm just like getting more and more excited as I see that green bar towards the end. So once we reach 79,000, then it's $6,000 to go in this GoFundMe. So I'm super, super excited. I know I'm a broken record at this point. You've heard me now for a year pushing this GoFundMe. Thank you. Keep it coming. Obviously, if you don't have any money to spare, we get it. No problem. If you do have a couple bucks, it is going towards journalism like that. It is also going towards in-the-field reporting. Obviously, we're at the Bernie rally. We got some other stories we're going to be hitting the road for very, very shortly. Also, Jen and I are working on a major, major investigative story. So excited to break that. We're talking to 2 outlets right now. We also, this Thursday, you will be able to join us for our members call, which we have every single month for our Status Quo members. So I hope that you will join us for that members call. Hold on as I get it for you. The screen is black for a reason. Hold on. Farewell. I've come to see you go. There it is. 7:30 Eastern, Thursday. Join us for our monthly members call. For those of you that have been on it, a lot of fun. We talk, we laugh, express concerns, questions, comments, concerns, whatever you want to talk about, we'll do. We're not going to tell you the exact nature of the story, but we'll certainly give you a couple hints as to what we're working on and all of the behind the scenes, as much as we can without giving it away. So join us if you're a member or a patron, same thing, statusquo.com/join. If you're a member, you'll get the link before the call this Thursday. If you are not a member, of course, I think you put the wrong date. Today's Monday. So that would be October 24th. We'll get that fixed for tomorrow. But if you're not a member, join us before Thursday, statusquo.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. And if you join us, you will get a call. You'll get a link to join the call. It's not through YouTube. It's a video call through Zoom. So, thank you. We just got another super chat. Mike Stander, $10 in the super chat. Great, thanks. Great interview, thanks. Well, thank you. I'm glad you guys liked it. And that's it. I got to head over to my brother's. I'm having dinner with my mother. Mama Sheridan. So I gotta end for the day, but we'll have some other interviews from Bernie's rally posting tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Remember, we are very, very actively pushing membership. So if you are not a member yet, definitely consider signing up. It's as cheap as $5 to $10 a month. It makes a very, very big difference to grow our membership. We want to get to 1,000 by the end of this year, so we definitely have some work to do. We're thinking about maybe doing some paid ads coming up to grow that membership. We've avoided it thus far because it's not cheap to do paid advertisement for membership, but we definitely we need to grow our membership. So definitely sign up if you got $5 to $10 a month to support independent, in the field journalism. And I'll put the link one last time, and you will very soon not have to hear me anymore, for our GoFundMe. Drop it in if you can. We are getting close, folks. We are getting close. Just less $6,589 away from reaching our ultimate goal. Thank you for watching. And remember, most people are not lacking compassion in this country. Most people have no idea what is happening all around them. Peace out.